General Hasnain, always good to have you on India Matters. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to kick it off. In a couple of hours from now, General Asim will be lunching with the US president. I'm sure the Indian diplomatic machine, already used to Trump's brand of diplomacy and politics, would have war-gamed the possibility of something unpredictable like this actually happening. But how do you read this lunch with the US president, sir?
Thank you, Shiv. Actually, Shiv, in the last 10 minutes, I've been hearing your analysis. You yourself are spot on, and I really need not repeat much of what you have said.
No, we need your view, sir.
I'll add one or two issues here.
Yes.
First of all, it reminds you of the famous adage, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. It's all a question of interests. Everything revolves around interests. Having said that, I think we need to add to the list of favors that Pakistanis have done to the United States also the sale of $650 million worth of ammunition, which was sold when Ukraine ran dry of ammunition, when they had fired all the ammunition of Europe, which was available there. It was only from Pakistan finally where it was lifted and taken by C-17 aircraft all the way to Kyiv, and that's how the war was sustained. That's an added point which I wanted to bring. Besides this, the question which you have put is that a failure of Indian diplomacy. I would say, going by that same adage of permanent friends and permanent enemies, why should I classify this as a failure of Indian diplomacy? I don't want to set myself impossible tasks because I know that there is, as you saw yourself said, a realpolitik which is taking place there, right? And putting yourself under pressure with that kind of a thing may be a really unfair one to India itself. The fact remains, the Pakistan-US relationship goes back to CENTO and CETO.
Yeah.
And I will also remind our viewers that if I was in the United States attending a course of instruction as a part of the Indian Army, and I was in a lineup in which there were Pakistanis and Indians, the American general who would walk in and be greeted by us would first shake hands with the Pakistani and not with me, ever. That's because this relationship is now ages old. We are re-establishing our relationship. We are working on it tremendously, but as I said, ultimately it's an interest-based relationship.
Yeah.
We've done well, I think, that there is a strategic relationship with the United States which is in the making, and I don't think anything negative has really come out as far as we are concerned. Our Prime Minister has communicated very, very strongly in that 35-minute conversation that he's had with President Trump. He's communicated 5 or 6 very important points which otherwise were not being communicated.
And
Mr. Trump does not understand India well enough.
General Hasnain, since you mentioned,
Modi has done that.
Since you mentioned that this is not a failure of politics or diplomacy, look at the breaking news we're getting right now. I want to go straight to it, and I'll bring General Hasnain to react on that. Trump has changed his tune after speaking to Prime Minister Modi for 35 minutes on the phone today. A big U-turn by the US president, who last month had tried to take complete credit for the ceasefire after Operation Sindoor. Trump has said it is Modi who stopped the war on the Indian side, but he still says that he stopped the war on the Pakistan side. That part could actually be true because, after all, it was Pakistan that went running to the United States, and then the United States had told Pakistan to get on the hotline and ask for a ceasefire from India. This is Trump taking the biggest U-turn of the season and saying it was India, it was the Indian Prime Minister that caused the ceasefire from the Indian side and stopped the war. Here's President Trump.
Well, I stopped the war between Pakistan. I love Pakistan. I think Modi is a fantastic man. I spoke to him last night. We're going to make a trade deal with Modi of India. But I stopped the war between Pakistan and India. This man was extremely influential in stopping it from the Pakistan side, Modi from the India side, and others. And they were going at it, and they're both nuclear countries. I got it stopped. I don't think I had one story. Did I have one story written about it? I stopped the war between 2 major nations, major nuclear nations. I don't think I had a story written about it, but that's okay. You know why? The people know. The people know.
So Trump changes his stance after all, and it took a 35-minute conversation with the Indian Prime Minister where he was very mildly told that this is credit that you cannot take. This was something that India imposed on Pakistan, not giving them a choice. And there is Trump giving that credit to the Indian Prime Minister. So big breaking story here on NDTV. General Hasnain, I want to bring you back in on this. That was President Trump saying it was the Indian Prime Minister, it was Modi who stopped the war from the Indian side. This, this arises from precisely what you were saying, sir.
This is exact. I'm so glad that we were not wrong in our assessment at all. We were absolutely bang on that we are setting impossible targets for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that in the United States, President Trump does not understand India, does not understand South Asia well enough. He has to be advised from time to time. I think Prime Minister Modi has chosen a very opportune moment. 35 minutes of conversation and strongly put across, very, very transparently put across. He didn't hold back his horses at all on this. And I think this is Prime Minister Modi's personal diplomatic success.
Very, very true. And, this conversation that continues, General Hasnain, between India and the US administration, that 35-minute phone conversation was a long one. It was a detailed one. Two leaders who actually enjoy quite a good personal sort of rapport and connection and body language. Trump, in fact, invited the Prime Minister off the cuff. He said, why don't you stop in the United States on your way out of the G7? And the Indian Prime Minister said, I've got things to do. I'm on my way to Croatia. I can't disrupt my schedule, for this trip. But why don't we meet during the Quad meeting? But where does this leave India-US relations going forward? My final question to you, General Hasnain. Are things on an even keel? This is an unpredictable US president we're dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, President Trump is known for his maverick ways, if I may use that term, not a very laudatory term as such. But having said that, we are fully aware of the fact that Indo-US relations have been on a roller coaster for quite some time. There are bumps which keep coming along from time to time. If you go into the history of the last 30 years, you will come across a fair number of bumps. This is one of those bumps which has come.
Yeah.
I'm sure this whole thing will get restored again. We've had some great strategic agreements with them. And I'm sure once the trade and tariff deal, which is going to be the big thing coming up, once the trade and tariff deal goes through, I think India and the United States are going to be on even keel completely.
General Hasnain, thank you very much, sir, for your time and for helping us understand the story. And I'm actually glad this story broke right here on India Matters, because this is precisely what we were speaking out. It answers that question quite plainly. Trump taking a U-turn. The credit for that ceasefire rests solely with India. Modi stopped the war on the Indian side, and he was the one who convinced Pakistan. That is the subtext of what Trump has said, to ask for that ceasefire, to get on the hotline and call India, which is something that we already knew. So finally, the truth has been affirmed by the US president, who at least so far was trying to take the credit for it. Before I go back to Asim Munir, Ambassador Javed Ashraf also joins us now for an expert view on this, and few better than him on this big breaking story. Ambassador Ashraf, welcome. Sorry to have kept you waiting, sir. The breaking story now, Trump's new words on that ceasefire, which had become a bone of contention as far as India was concerned. After that call with Modi, where the Indian Prime Minister said that it was India's actions that led to that ceasefire and precipitated that ceasefire, it looks like Trump is ready to accept that, and he said it openly as well. What do you think, sir?
I think, Shiv, you're overreading that. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I listened to President Trump's words. I don't think he's nuancing his statement.
Yeah, he never does.
He is basically saying that there was a U.S. role, but it is Prime Minister Modi who stopped the war on the Indian side. And he also mentioned that the leader on the Pakistan side stopped it too. What he's saying is that he's, in a sense, somewhat of a little play on what he said then, that, he credited then also the leaders on both sides.
Yeah.
His initial statement for taking this very wise step of stepping back, etc. So I think what he saw or what he heard from Prime Minister Modi in that telephone conversation was a kind of very blunt message and I think in some sense as diplomatically as possible an expression of anger at this repeated assertion, which in a sense was also undermining the trust in India-United States relations. So he has nuanced it. I'm not sure he has completely backed away from it. And he's not the kind of a person who is going to let go of credit very easily. Remember that he's got very little to show for his belief that his personal power can shake and move the world. I mean, Ukraine war is actually more lethal at the moment.
Yes.
Israel, which is so dependent on the United States, basically Prime Minister Netanyahu went ahead and did what he wanted to do. He's in fact now joining in a sense. So there are many with China in the trade dispute. It's really the China which seems to be having the upper hand.
Yeah.
So I would say that we take this with a little bit of caution. And why I'm saying this, Shiv, is because I've dealt with this relationship for about more than a decade through a very consequential phase, including on many occasions where India and Pakistan issues were involved. There is something very structural about this. And we should not also overplay or overhype the magnitude or the importance of the relationship. It is a very consequential relationship.
Yes.
But from a strategic perspective, remember, I mean, you've heard that repeatedly from the United States. They treat Pakistan very differently.
Yes.
They do not want to bring Pakistan into India-US relations. They may help you on counterterrorism. They may help you when it comes to preventing a terrorist attack with intelligence information, but they will not sacrifice Pakistan for your sake. They have other interests with Pakistan. You need a rogue in case you are working in a troubled region to be on your side. You need a compliant rogue rather than a defiant rogue, and Pakistan has played that role beautifully, whether it comes to terrorism, Afghanistan, now with Iran, and also in some sense, US trying to prevent Pakistan getting completely in China's clutches at a very strategic location. So they have those interests. On 5th November 2001, Donald Rumsfeld, standing in front of South Bloc, had said very clearly, we need Pakistan for terrorism, we need India for China. Now, what they need India for China is not necessarily mean that they will also help India against China, because the great powers have their own calculations. My sense, my always constant issue is we get disappointed because we invest more than we should in terms of expectations in the relationship. It's a very consequential relationship. It's critical for our national transformation and for our rise as a great power. We need the technology, we need the market finances, resources, intellectual capital, energy, collaboration in certain areas of defense, but not in critical combat areas. Also in building blocks of the digital technology and artificial intelligence and the industries of the future. Focus on that. Keep your objectives very clear on the relationship. And you remember, there is a very fundamental disconnect between a country that believes in unipolarity and a country that is wedded to the idea of strategic autonomy and multipolarity. That incongruity will always be a source of friction. I mean, somebody in the United States asked me, when can you go to war with us against China? I mean, if that is the expectations, a country like India will never be able to fulfill it, and there will be another cost associated with it.
I'm very glad that you've, that you've nuanced that and put that into perspective, because, Ambassador Ashraf, you're right. We do tend to invest a lot of emotions in the India-US relationship in the context of what happens with Pakistan. It's not always easy to separate the two, especially with what has just happened. And I'm so glad that you've put that into perspective for us, and you've been in the trenches of that relationship.